Once upon a time there was an old goat. She had 7 kids. She loved them as much as only a mother can love her children. She was going to go into the forest, bring herbs and branches for lunch. She called all her children and warned them to be afraid of the evil wolf. He often pretends, but you can immediately recognize him by his rude voice and black paws. The kids understood everything and assured their mother that they would be very careful.
Okay.
The old goat set off calmly. Little time has passed. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and shouted in a rude voice that the kids should immediately open it. But the kids from the rough voice realized that it was a wolf. They answered that it was not Mother's voice. Her voice was kind and thin, and this voice was very rude, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf went to the merchant and bought himself a large piece of chalk. He ate it, and his voice became thin. He came back, knocked on the door, and in a thin voice asked the kids to open it. The wolf put its paw on the window and waits. And the kids saw her and answered that the mother's paws were not black, but white, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf ran to the bakery and asked to give him some dough. The wolf anointed his paw with the dough. The villain approached the door for the 3rd time, put his white paw on the window and knocked. They saw the kids that the paw was white, and thought that it was their mother. They opened the door, but there was a wolf in front of them. They got scared and began to scatter in all directions. One kid jumped under the table, another on the bed, the 3rd on the stove, the 4th into the kitchen, the 5th into the closet, the 6th under the sink, and the 7th hid in the grandfather clock. But the wolf found them all, opened its jaws and swallowed one by one. Only one thing he did not find: the youngest, who hid in the clock. Having eaten his fill, the wolf left. He stretched out on a green meadow under a tree and fell asleep. Soon an old goat came home from the forest. Oh, what did she see there? The door was wide open. The table, chairs, benches were overturned. The wash basin was broken. Pillows and blankets were thrown from the bed. She began to look for her children, but she could not find them anywhere. I called them by name, but no one answered. She went up to the clock, and in response there was a thin voice of the youngest kid. She took him out of there, and he said that a wolf came and ate everyone. How the goat cried for her poor children. Finally, she left the house, and the youngest kid ran after her. She came to the meadow, so a wolf was lying by the tree and snoring, so that the branches were trembling. She looked at him from all sides and saw that in his swollen belly something was moving and floundering. She guessed that these were her children, and was very happy that they were still alive. She told the kid to run home as quickly as possible and bring scissors, a needle and thread. Then the goat cut the belly of the wolf with scissors, and from there one kid stuck out its head. And then the others jumped out, all 6, and nothing bad happened to them. What a joy it was! They began to hug their mother, jump and dance. Then the old goat said it would be nice to teach the wolf a lesson while he was still sleeping. They pulled stones and stuffed them into the wolf's belly. An old goat sewed up his belly, but he did not notice anything, never even moved. The wolf slept, got to his feet and felt such a thirst in his belly that he decided to drink water from the well. He barely approached the well, bent down to the water, and heavy stones pulled him to the bottom of the well. 7 kids saw this and began to dance for joy with their mother. That's how they taught the evil wolf a lesson.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl. Once her rich father married an evil stepmother. She settled in the house with her 2 daughters. Their faces were beautiful and white, but their hearts were evil and cruel. And then came a difficult time for the poor girl. From morning until late in the evening, they forced her to do dirty work, carry water, heat the stove, cook food, wash dishes, and do laundry. And besides, the half-sisters did their best to upset her as much as possible. They mocked her, poured peas and wheat into the ashes, and she had to sit and pick them out. In the evening, when she was tired of work, she had to go to bed not in bed, but on the floor, next to the stove. And because she was always in ash, dust, and dirty, the sisters called her Cinderella. But then it happened one day that the king started a feast, which was supposed to last for 3 whole days, and called all the beautiful girls of the country to the holiday so that his son could choose a bride for himself. When the 2 named sisters learned that they, too, could come to the feast, they instantly began to dress up and preen. Cinderella also wanted to go dancing, but her stepmother did not let her go, because she had no dress or shoes, and she was dirty. And then the evil stepmother poured a bowl of wheat into the ashes and said that if Cinderella collected it in 2 hours, then she could go with her sisters. Cinderella went out into the garden and cried. And then 2 white doves flew in, followed by a whole flock of different birds. They swooped down on the ash and began to peck, and so they chose all the grains in a bowl. In less than an hour, they finished their work, and everyone flew back. Cinderella brought a bowl to her stepmother, began to rejoice, thinking that she could go to the feast. But her stepmother would not let her in any way. She turned her back on Cinderella and hurried with her 2 daughters to the ball. When there was no one left at home, Cinderella sat down on the floor and cried with grief. And then 2 white doves flew in, followed by a whole flock of different birds, and they threw off their dress and shoes shiny and all in gold. She quickly put on this dress and came to the bride. They saw her stepsisters and stepmother and thought that it must be some strange princess, she was so beautiful in her golden dress. It never occurred to them that it was Cinderella. The prince came out to meet her, took her hand, and they began to dance. And he liked Cinderella so much that he did not want to dance with any other girl. She danced until the evening and wanted to return home, but the prince asked her to see her off. He wanted to know whose beautiful girl this is, and where she lives. But Cinderella ran away from him and climbed onto the dovecot. The prince ordered to destroy the dovecot, but there was no one in it. And nowhere near could he find his beautiful stranger. No one could have guessed that Cinderella was rescued by pigeons that took her home. The prince was upset and went to the palace with his head down. And suddenly he saw a shoe, lifted it up. It was so small and elegant and all of pure gold. The prince guessed that when Cinderella ran away from him, the shoe from her left foot remained on one of the steps. The prince was delighted and ordered to find the mistress of this shoe, and to whom it suits he will marry that one. The parents returned from the ball. They saw that Cinderella was asleep in her shirt on ash, and a dim light was on by the stove. Both sisters went to their rooms, hoping that tomorrow they would be lucky enough to put on the golden slipper. The next day, the prince came to their house, and said that everyone who wants to try on the shoe of his future wife should come out. 2 sisters came out, and the stepmother locked Cinderella in the house and did not let her out. The older sister tried it on a small shoe. The younger sister tried it on the shoe as great. The prince was about to leave, but Cinderella climbed out of the window and ran out to him. And she put on a shoe, and it just fit her. The prince looked into her eyes and recognized in her the very beautiful girl with whom he danced. He took Cinderella, put her on a horse and rode off to play a wedding with her. And he ordered the sisters and stepmother to be locked in their house, and never let them out of there. This is how they were punished for their malice and deceit.